Hello and welcome back to the show, World War II Books Where to Start. I'm your host, Roger Wynn, reporting live from the Derby House in Liverpool, Western Approaches Command. And today, let's talk about those U-boats out there in the Atlantic trying to sink all our ships and starve us out of this island. U-boats have a long and glorious history, shall we say, at least propaganda-wise and mythology-wise. The reality is far different, of course, as many things are from the war. Reality versus propaganda versus mythology. But we're going to do some reality checks today, and we're going to start with the old stuff and bring it up to date with the new stuff. And we'll start off with the Seawolves, Wolfgang Frank. This is a golden oldie from 1955, and it's Ballantine War book. They had their own series of war books just like Bantam did, and check that eagle out there with the swastika. Probably couldn't print that today, or getting to the point where you couldn't print that today because of the current political situation in the world, but you know, back then they weren't afraid to do it. So this is a first attempt at a general history of the U-boat war, 39 to 45, written by a German journalist. He was in the service in the war, Kriegsmarine, I think. Can't find really any details on the guy at all. He passed away in 1980. This is 220 pages. No index, no references, no sources. There are footnotes, but there's no citations for those footnotes. And this is a sort of the apologetic press of the Germans in the 50s trying to rehab the war a little bit into it wasn't so bad after all, we weren't that evil kind of thing. And it's way out of print, but I've held on to it. I have to. Its value is also diminished because it's pre-Ultra. Anything prior to the Ultra revelation in 1970, unless it's a personal memoir, it is diminished in value because you just don't get the full story. The participants didn't have the full story, that they were already compromised code-wise, so it's kind of difficult to say this is top-notch stuff. Regardless, it's a collector's thing, I guess, a keepsake. If not, it's interesting. It's well written. It's easy enough to read, but it's way out of print. And then Knight Raider of the Atlantic, Terence Robertson, also dating from 55. This was originally titled The Golden Horseshoe. And I don't know if that was just the English title and they changed it for North America Press or what, but anyway. Terence Robertson, 1921 to 1970, was an RN officer during the war. I don't know what his posting was, but he became a journalist and a writer afterwards, moved to Canada, wrote a few books, and kind of faded out of the scene. But this is a first attempt at a biography of Otto Kretschmer, one of the three biggies in the early U-boat war. Schepke, Preen, and Kretschmer were the big three. They all came to grief in the same convoy battle in February 41, and Kretschmer was the only one that lived, and he was hauled off to a Canadian prisoner of war camp, where he eventually concocted a scheme to spring his boys and have U-boats pick them up off the coast of Canada so they could sail back to Germany and keep the fight alive. It was squelched as the amateurish plot it was, but that's kind of just kind of crazy thing to think that you could break out of a Canadian prison camp in 44 and have Donuts and his boys send a boat to pick you up. It's kind of wild stuff, but also points out the ego in this guy was ginormous. And as good as those early aces appear as far as ship sunk and tonnage racked up, it also goes to show that they benefit from early war conditions where the British weren't adapting to their techniques and tactics and weren't on the ball yet, sonar-wise or radar-wise. So the early successes and the really high numbers of ships sunk by the best aces are reflective of that period of weakened British defenses, as well as the long service of these U-boat captains, pre-war experience in the U-boats, a long training regimen that Donuts hooked up to make them sharp and experienced. That cadre, that tight cadre of the pre-war captains dwindled swiftly through attrition, and after 42, the command level quality was never the same, as the service expanded so fast and so roughly with inexperienced commanders. They just couldn't keep up the quality. But this is also way out of print. Kind of valuable for the first bio of Kretschmer, but not essential. And then the oddity of the bunch, U-Boat 977 by Heinz Schaefer. There's a Bantam War book here. This was first published in, where was that? 52. So it predates the others a little bit. Heinz Schaefer was the commander of U-977. And his claim to fame here, the only reason we know about this guy at all, is he didn't want to surrender at the end of hostilities. He was worried about long internment and prisoner of war stuff. So he sailed his boat to Argentina. 66 days underwater because he had a snorkel fitted to his boat. And that kind of set the tone for post-war submarine development. Long submergence and independence from land command or land requirements. But the book is kind of tedious. There's no combat. He's just escaping and evading with his crew. And aside from one brief stopover at Cape Verde Islands, there's no variation here. Yeah, it was tense and it was claustrophobic and nasty. Inside a U-boat is, of course, disgusting with 40, 50 men packed in there and rotting food and all that good stuff. But it's not that valuable historically. The boat that was eventually towed back to the States, and we sank it as a target in 46. Schaefer and his crew were hauled back to Germany and interned for a while regardless. So it kind of all for nothing. It did create a bit of a sensation when this and U-530 popped up on South America shores after the war. How they get here, they're hiding Nazi war criminals, Adolf Hitler's on board. You know, that's kind of the mythology aspect there creeping in. It kind of kept it kind of famous for a little bit. But overall, for completionist's sake, it's Abandoned War edition. It doesn't have the flyleaf like I like with the extra illustration inside, but you know, I've held on to it for all these years because I have to. Then going a little bit more modern, Michael Gannon's Operation Drumbeat from 1990. That's going to be, I don't have the page count because I don't have my hard copy anymore. I don't know what happened to it. Shame on me. Gannon passed away in 2017. He is primarily a Floridian historian. He lived his entire life in Florida, was dedicated to that state's history, and the U-boats creep in because of Operation Drumbeat and the sinkings off the coast of America in the early part of late part of 41, early part of 42. So this chronicles the patrols of Reinhard Hartigan in particular, Knights Cross Winter, Oak Leaves, who his claim to fame is his 2 drumbeat patrols. And drumbeat was Donus's idea to spring a surprise on the Americans in the early days of entry into the war against America, calculating that their defenses would be down and off guard and not organized yet. And he can make a big splash and rack up a lot of ships sunk and a lot of tonnage. Successful, yes. Overall war effect, nada. It caused a stir, of course, in America. Oh my God, we're seeing ships being sunk offshore, literally. Beachgoers are watching ships being sunk. They're burning bright as torches at night. Bodies are washed up on shore. Oil's everywhere. This is just, what a shambles. Michael Gannon goes a little bit deep on this. He calls it the Pearl Harbor of the Atlantic, if I remember correctly. That's a bit overboard. But I understand because he's Florida based and that's his bailiwick that he's coming to the defense and kind of a little bit upset about the course of the war in respect. How could we be caught off guard? We're at war, we know this is coming. And he's going to point the finger right at Admiral King, of course. King takes the blame for everything here. He was Cominch, and he was responsible for the Eastern Seaboard too. This is going to be refuted later on in the next book. But Admiral King has been repeatedly criticized for his response to the U-boat war off the eastern coast, not organizing convoys fast enough, not getting our defenses together fast enough, being too devoted to the Pacific, etc. So there's that. Operation Drumbeat is still pretty good today. As I said in a previous video, I think his Black May is a little bit better, or a lot better, qualitatively, 30 years on. But Drumbeat is kind of essential reading for modern U-boat stuff. And also benefits from the revelation of Ultra. This is part 1, Hunters 39 to 42. This is a massive volume from 1996. 700 pages, main body, plus 18 appendices, totally 70 more pages, and then there's the notes and index. It's a massive door stopper, and it's going to take a while to wade through this baby. But it is a complete, up-to-date state of the art in '96, and still today, I think, history of the U-boat war from all angles: British, American, German, along with technology, ultra. And the first part, of course, is the glorious successes of the U-boats. But he states right up front, as a smack in the face to the mythology, that the U-boats managed to sink 1% of all Allied shipping in the war. 1%. That's crazy. 2,600 ships were sunk overall, and that's front-loaded into those first 3 years. After 42, the sinkings go down drastically and dramatically. So Donuts' dream of having 100 U-boats operational at the start of the war, or 300 I should say, he wanted 100 on station, 100 transiting, and 100 in training repairs. That was his dream U-boat force that he thought he needed to defeat Great Britain. Not America. That was just to defeat Great Britain. That was his grand strategy. In essence, he's refighting the last war from his perspective of, we almost did it. We can almost do it again if I have all my requirements. Well, virtually no commander goes into a conflict with everything they want. They always want more. The reality was that's an unattainable goal financially and resource-wise for Germany to build that many U-boats pre-war. And he's also not thinking that Great Britain would have a naval response to this massive building program of U-boats. They're not that stupid. They're going to catch on to what you're doing, and they're going to prep for it. So this dream of, I could have done it with, it is a pipe dream. Clay Blair is going to show you he's going to report on every patrol from every U-boat. I'm not kidding, every one. Now, they're not covered in excessive details. It's a lot of bullet points. You such and such sailed from blah, 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 1 sinking or no sinkings, 2 attacks, that kind of thing. But the important stuff is detailed in paragraph. Plus the converses and the technology are covered in large blocks of text. So it really is completionist stuff. It is absolutely thorough and dedicated and realistic down to the bone. There is no sensationalism here. Even the famous convoy battles, he says, if you just analyze it by numbers, they're not that far out of whack with normal successes for the non-dramatic convoy battles, or a single U-boat attacking a convoy, never vectoring anybody else onto it, would have about, percentage-wise, it all come down to about the same thing. He focuses on return per U-boat per day at sea, which is kind of an interesting early metric for it. And it goes to show that these patrols of the Americas look sensational in early going, but the amount of transit time doesn't pay off for the turnaround time in port also. And your actual sinkings per day at sea are terrible. Just as the Type 9 patrols to the coast of Africa look really good early war, sometimes 10 and 11 ships sunk with virtually no convoys down there. But the amount of time on station drains away from what you're supposed to be doing, and according to Donuts' own formulation, that the North Atlantic convoys are the bread and butter. It's what we want to get at all the time. So all these distractions add up to diminution of force and spreading out your available assets into a large target pool that's not paying dividends. And all this is really analyzed well, and it's not the most seat of your pants reading, obviously, if we're detailing stats and technology developments, ultra and the cavity magnetron, fitting radar on an aircraft. But if you're really into naval stuff, yeah, this is absolutely essential, top shelf stuff. 5.5 stars on this, you can't go wrong. The only other thing I would say is that it's far more professionally done than his earlier history on the American submarines in the Pacific called Silent Victory. 2 volumes or 1 volume, depending on the edition you get. But that was because he was a submariner in the U.S. force. He made 2 patrols of 45, and I feel like that contributes to the more seat of your pants, action-oriented style writing. Plus, it was 1975, so it's the kind of a 25 years difference or 20 years difference, kind of generational aspect too. This is far more analytical, dedicated, and definitely got a distance, a proper historian's distance from it, as opposed to Silent Victory, which is more, I wouldn't say flag waving, but certainly has a victor's kind of approach to it. So you can't go wrong with this. This is still in print. If you really, like I said, well, you can go wrong if you don't want something that's epic length, then stay away from it. But if you really want to know the nuts and bolts of the U-boat war without any mythology or propaganda from the British side, because they over sensationalized the U-boat war, Clay Blair is the man to go to. And that'll wrap it up for this edition of World War II Books Where to Start. I hope you found one of these you like, and come on back next time and we'll do it again, perhaps the same topic, perhaps a different one. Until next time, I'm Roger Wynn. Going to organize some more convoys. Happy reading.